Very good.
To determine whether McCullough should be allowed to withdraw his plea. Alaska State Troopers are reviewing how officers investigate traffic accidents after the body of an 8-foot man killed in a car crash Sunday when
This is the Princess in Fairbanks.
Bobbing around from the train ride yesterday.
Judy?
What? We're showing the mountains of Alaska made into a deck with the sun and the birds in the sky at the Fairbanks.
Have no utilities except electricity. They have to put in their own wells and septic systems, maintain their own driveways. That's the modern day pioneers. We're also going to tell you about the fascinating Athabascan Indian culture, which has thrived here for 10,000 years. Temperatures down to 60 and 70 degrees below zero, all the way up to 90 degrees above. So you'll learn a lot about the earlier cultures. We'll show you a little bit of everything along the river, the types of houses that are built, the prices of property, land, home construction. We're going to stop by Susan Butcher's Trailbreaker Kennels and see who's on shore there. We'll tell you more about that in a little while. There's some reindeer on shore. We'll share that with you. At any time while we're underway, feel free to move about the vessel. You can go from side to side or deck to deck to take pictures. And what could be actually more picturesque than an Alaskan bush plane? And over here on the left-hand side, you'll see several little float planes on this waterfront. And then there's a little runway right next to the river. And down at the far end of that, you'll see a little red and white Piper Super Cub taxiing. Now he's going to turn around and take off coming toward the boat. And we're going to stop right here. We'll be the grandstand. He'll provide the show. That's Bill Johnson in that airplane, and you're more than welcome to move about. Just make sure you're not blocking somebody behind you. If you're near a window or a railing, and you're more than welcome to get into a different position. Bill Johnson learned how to fly from his father, just as our captain up in the wheelhouse learned how to pilot this vessel from his father. Now he's going to be doing a short field takeoff and landing for you. This runway is 1,000 feet long. And he'll be using just about 1/4 of it to get that little airplane in the air. He probably is checking the wind right now to see which end of the runway to take off from. And it looks like he's going to be taking off from this end. We'll go downriver just a little ways, so he'll be taking off toward the boat. You'll get a nice view of it. I might point out that he gets into the air fairly quickly. And so you want to be ready to get that shot. So when he starts to roll, he's almost as good as airborne. This little runway is very typical of runways throughout rural Alaska, the sandbars, the beaches, the bits of tundra, places they can put these little airplanes down. You see that's a pretty sturdy little craft with a big tires on it. He's already got the thing off the ground. There, probably just when he runs out of ground is right there. And a steep climb, and he is right on his way.
What, about 50 feet? We got up.
Bill Johnson, bush pilot. And he's going to come back and land right next to us. And so he'll be coming in on that little gravel portion right next to the boat right there. These airplanes, by the way, are not toys, they're not recreational vehicles. In fact, they're a way of life and a very important tool for survival up here. If you look at our maps, you understand a little bit about why. A lot of the villages out here, their service comes from these small airplanes. In fact, it was Bill Johnson himself who was called out to rural Alaska not that many years ago. He was asked to pick up a lady who was pregnant and bring her back to Fairbanks in case there were complications with the delivery. Well, he didn't know just what they meant by complicated delivery until halfway back to Fairbanks. It's the blessed event that happened in a little airplane just about like that one. He was a pretty busy guy for a while. They were flying the airplane, helping the delivery. Everything was fine. They got back to Fairbanks, got the mother and child to the hospital. Everybody was healthy. Then they got to the paperwork. You know how paperwork is. The question on the paperwork is, where was the baby born? And they were all scratching their heads. The doctors and nurses couldn't figure it out. Bill Johnson was still there. He said, that's easy. The baby was airborne. Now you'll see him coming around just off the stern of the boat down here, and then he'll come right over the river about where Steamboat Landing is. You may be able to see Discovery 2 up there. And this is quite the picture, folks, because you're going to have these little float planes in the foreground, and then that little Piper Super Cub coming in over here. Now Bill is probably going to do an interesting maneuver. He's going to get right into position and then lose a lot of altitude real fast. And you can see him on your monitors there, lining himself up to come in. And feel free to get in the position where you can see this nicely, but there you come, losing a lot of altitude real fast. Pretty hot landing right here, right over top of a little float plane. It's a great picture for you. Leaving the picnic table, thank you, Bill. That's very nice. And there he is. He'll be at a stop before he reaches the end of the boat. Doors are open. He'll give us a wave. Bill Johnson, thank you very much. Isn't that a pretty little airplane? He just finished redoing that airplane, getting new paint job on it, a lot of decoration. Looks mighty fine. Well, those little airplanes are pretty important in our lives up here. I grew up in rural Alaska where planes like that and the DC-3 and the other mid-sized aircraft delivered the mail. Nothing quite so romantic as hearing the echo of a big old airplane engine through the canyons bringing in the mail to the smaller communities in our state. This little airstrip right here, everybody just about is involved in aviation. Pilots like Bill, mechanics as well. Thank you once again, Bill. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see a yard with 3 airplanes in it. There's more airplanes usually in this front yard than there are cars. That's just a matter of lifestyle. These people want to get out into the rural areas. They take off on floats here on the water, wheels on land, and in the winter they change them all to skis, and they can take off here on land or on the river using skis on the ice. So very maneuverable in this little aircraft.
There's our car, dude.
Exactly like ours.
Probably is.
Ours is pretty shot.
The early pioneers did. Then they scribed and hand-shaped and cut each one of those logs, one to fit upon the next, pretty much as a stone cutter from other parts of the world might shape stone. Built that log home up, got it framed in, and then they let it sit for an entire year and just let the log settle before they cut the doors and windows into it. Once they finished that part of the process, then they cut the doors and windows in. They didn't crack or jam that way, you see. Those logs, all 67 feet in length, 21 inches in diameter at the base. Took 5 years to construct that log home. Now, you know, one of the advantages of a slightly overcast day is you get some interesting perspectives on things. And check out this house over here on the right-hand side and just watch in their big picture windows there. Isn't that a nice reflection on us? Those big picture windows, by the way, are triple glazed. And it's not uncommon to have triple and quadruple glaze. Now, that means multiple panes of glass with air space between them. And you know, when you get down to temperatures of 60 below zero or up to 90 above, you want to keep the cold and the hot. Susan Butcher.
Good morning.
Well, Susan, what a treat. And you know, I was thinking it was raining a little bit ago, and you and the Chamber of Commerce don't agree on what is ideal weather. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, no, we love this overcast for the dogs, and even when it is raining, they enjoy that because it cools them off a little bit more. If they were munching and got to choose their favorite temperature, it'd be somewhere around 10 below zero. So even this is way too warm for them. But because the overcast, we're getting to run all the dogs today. You may even see them going by me in the background. We've just finished running the main racing team. We have 28 of those dogs. And most of the summer, we really don't do a whole lot of practice with them in harness. They already know what they're doing. But it's really important to keep them in shape. So we take up to 14 at a time in our riverboat here and go down to one of the islands and let them run loose with us, and that keeps them in great shape. So that when we do start their serious training on August 1st, they're ready for it. And we have a trail back here that goes around the lake. We go about 18 to 20 miles an hour with those main racing dogs, so that's always an exciting time. And we actually still continue to run them loose out on the island too. What you may see going on behind me is that my helper Tanya is running the yearlings. And we keep them in harness all through the summer. We try and run them on 2.5-mile runs. They're pulling a 4-wheeled cart. And we're looking for new young leaders out of that group. And we're trying to teach them their 5 different speed commands, and G for right, H for left. There's a lot that those young dogs have to learn, and it's best learned through repetition and from running with the older dogs. That's really important for them. But then, of course, we also concentrate very heavily on our puppies during the summer. Besides just giving them a lot of love and attention, they need to go on daily runs. These are just loose. These are well before they're in harness. This group is 9 and 11 weeks old. There's 2 different litters here. And we have a trail that we've cut through the woods here, almost 2 miles long. And it's like an obstacle course. There's water for them to go through. There's some logs to climb over. And there's a big cliff to go up. So these are small challenges for them. What we're trying to do is teach them the same love of adventure that we have and that the older dogs have. We always take some of the older dogs with us and their mothers. And this group is well on their way. I think we have a bunch of new young leaders out of this group. And we're always looking for great team dogs, too. These guys will go in harness for their first time when they're 5 months of age. Of course, we'll have snow on the ground by then. So we'll take one of our adult leaders, Ruff there, back by the gate. That's the dog that led David to victory in the Yukon Quest. He's one of our great old lead dogs. He's about 14 years old and is one of the best puppy leaders that we have. So we will put Ruffy out front. 6 puppies that have never been in harness before behind him, and it's so instinctive for them to pull that within just a minute or two they look like a small adult team of dogs. We actually have a saying here at the kennel that it only takes us 2.5 minutes to teach them to go, but about 2.5 years to teach them to whoa.
Just enthusiastic youngsters everywhere. You know, I noticed that these youngsters were kind of fawning over the great old patriarch over here, and they seem to admire him. How is Granite doing?
Well, he's doing great. In addition to all the dogs I've mentioned, we do have 25 retirees. All the dogs that we raise here at the kennel and that race with us retire with us. Granite is the oldest at 17 years old, and he's recovering from cancer surgery and doing just amazingly well. Granite was my main leader for many years. He led me to victory in the 1986 and 87 Iditarods, both of those in record time. And he also won countless other races for me between 300 and 500 miles in length. But his story goes on from there because while we were training for the 1988 racing season, he became very seriously ill, and I had to rush him down to Anchorage to a veterinary hospital to try and save his life. And we set up a cot next to his kennel so I could sleep with him there day and night, petting him and willing him to live. And finally, after 2 weeks, the veterinarians told me that I could take him home, but that he was never going to be able to run again, that he had permanent damage to his heart and liver and kidneys. So I took him back to the homestead in Eureka, and he was living in the cabin with David and I. But every time we'd take the other dogs out on runs, he would cry and howl, wishing that he could go out with us. And what the veterinarians didn't understand is that Granite had grown to be a magnificent canine athlete who loved to run and race. And all the dogs love running and racing, and they understand when they have won. And they have as much pride as any human athlete. Slowly but surely, Granite's test results started showing improvements that the veterinarians were astounded at. He was determined to get back on the team. They decided to let him start training with the little puppies on 2-mile runs, and he soon advanced to running with the yearlings on 10-mile runs. But this was late November, and at that time of year, I'm going up to 50 miles in a single run with my main racing dogs. But by January, Granite was once again running with the main team, and the veterinarians okayed him for a 200-mile race. And he towed that young team to a record-setting victory. And then 1.5 months later, he went on to do the impossible. He led me once again to victory in the Iditarod, and he did it by pulling me through a blinding snowstorm that stopped all of my competitors. So we finished 14 hours in front of the second place musher, who couldn't make it through the storm. And that made Granite the only lead dog to ever win 3 consecutive Iditarods.
Wow, that's a comeback story, isn't it, folks? Well, you know, even Granite, as old as he is, still recognizes the applause and the recognition, gives a little bark there. Ms. Susan, you mentioned a couple of dogs that are well into their teens, including Granite at 17. And to what do you attribute their longevity?
Well, I think a lot of it does have to do with the nutritional program that we give them. We have that set up for us by the folks at Cornell University. I think it also has to do with, of course, the constant love and care they get, but the veterinary care they get. We work with veterinarians all over the world, especially those that are well versed in canine sports medicine. But I think the most important thing is the exercise that they get. Each dog goes either swimming with us every day, they go loose running, or some form of exercise if it isn't mushing itself. And at the peak of their career, that means at the peak of the winter, it could be 50 miles to 100 miles in a single day of mushing. So they're incredibly fit. And even Granite, as I said, recovering from cancer surgery, he'll still insist on getting out going 1 mile to 5 miles a day, just loose running. He hasn't been in harness for ages, but going on the puppies walks with us, and I think it's that exercise that gives them the best.
Well, we're going to see some of them exercising just downriver, correct?
Yep, you will. David will be joining you and down at the village with many of our Iditarod champions and demonstrating a little bit about dog mushing.
Well, we'll look forward to it. Susan Butcher, I know you got a big kennel back there, 80 dogs to take care of. Get back to work. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us.
Thanks for stopping by.
Big job, and folks, take a little time to come around and down. You know, it takes a lot. Well, she mentioned that Dave Munson, her husband, will be downriver joining us at the Chena Indian Village. She'll have a dog team, 7-dog team with some of the champions from the Iditarod and the Quest in harness. And they'll be coming right next to the boat, a very dynamic dog team over there. This is his barge right here. He's a contractor and very active along the river. He did run for governor some years back, and you know, you don't have to win the race to have some kind of impact on the political system in this country. He's an Athabascan Indian elder. Look at that log home and you'll see that it's vertical construction, not the horizontal logs like you saw upriver. A little bit different style, big beams holding up that heavy sod roof and decorative antlers of moose and caribou on the ends of each one. Over here too on the right hand side, a little stern wheeler. That little vessel right there was where a retired couple lived on the river for a while. It was a recreational vehicle, really. They traveled the riverways of interior Alaska. When they got tired of living that lifestyle, then they had a crane set it on a foundation right there, and they hooked up all the utilities and they moved right in. Now this is all private property down in this area. Kennel, of course, and all these homes. Kind of a rural subdivision here and there, and some places just private lots with nice homes on them. Just downriver from this area on the right-hand side that we affectionately refer to as Garage Sale Point, you'll see a nice stand of these white spruce. And we mentioned earlier, white spruce is the largest evergreen in this part of the world. A mature white spruce may take 200 years to reach 2 feet in diameter. Nonetheless, they are an important part of a growing timber industry in interior Alaska, not only for logs like you saw in some of the homes, but also for lumber. A couple lumber mills nearby. Look back in the woods, right under these trees that have been kind of parked out a little bit with that blue tarp on the ground. But look through there, and back in there you'll see a brand new home under construction. Been going real fast. They started that just this spring. It's going to be a real pretty place. Tucked back in the woods, just exciting thing to see. Now, some folks will do that, kind of build the entire building. They might serve as their own contractor and hire a lot of subs to do the work for them, or they might do the entire project themselves. And you might find that the young couple raises a grub stake, buys some property, and then just adds to the house as they need it. As their family grows, then so does the house. kind of a tradition up here, kind of a pioneering spirit. You might have friends come over and help you do the parts of the house that you don't know how to do. Property in this area about $30,000 to $50,000 per acre. Construction costs running about $50 to $100 per square foot, depending on whether you do it yourself or have somebody help you. That house over on the right-hand side, right there with the for sale sign, a realtor listed that house for sale earlier this year at $275,000. Now these are year-round homes. They have their own wells and septic systems. Driveways might be a half a mile long out to the school bus route. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll see some folks who are doing a little landscaping now. A couple of years ago, they built this house, and it was very exciting because being right on the river like this, you could watch every stage of the construction. And when we were starting up in May, they were doing the site preparation. And when we were closing down in late September, our very last trips, they were putting on the roof. A couple of days ago, they had some soil brought in, put in their lawn and their driveway, and maybe their boat launching ramp. Real pretty home on the banks of the river. Just off the left-hand side here, you can see a beaver swimming along. He's right in front of the boat. Keep an eye on him about 50 yards off the bow, kind of about maybe 10 o'clock. It would be just dove under. Keep an eye out there. He may show up. Meanwhile, however, I don't want to get so distracted by the beaver that you miss the reindeer on the other side. You want to have your cameras ready for this because there will be a band of reindeer on the right-hand side of the boat here in just a few moments. And reindeer have an important role in Alaska's history. And we're going to stop right here, and when those reindeer come out, we'll tell you a little bit about them. Now, the reindeer are domestic creatures. Caribou are wild. That is the only difference between the two. If you take a look at this penned-in area over here, you'll see these domestic reindeer come out through the heavy timber in the back left-hand corner. Now, these are domestic animals. Their ancestors go all the way back to Lapland and Norway over 100 years ago. Here they come right out through the opening there. There's a little tiny one, that youngster right there, born on Easter Sunday. There's another male, the smaller of the adults, female. Oh, here we got a nice lineup. Now the one on the far right, that's the female. Right next to the female is the fawn that was born on Easter Sunday of this year. And then the two on the end, over on the left-hand end, are both males. Now if you take a look at their antlers, you'll see that their antlers have a very fine velvet-like material on them. Now when the antlers are in velvet, they're still being developed, and that layer of tissue and skin protects the blood vessels that carry the vitamins, the minerals, and the nutrients right up into the antlers. Now after the antlers have developed, that velvet will fall away, and then the antlers will cure, and they'll have a rich mahogany coloration. If you look closely at those antlers, particularly now and when you go ashore, you'll see that especially the larger one, who's starting to move back into the background now, his velvet is starting to come off, and it looks a little bit gross. But that's just a natural process. As they shed this velvet, it isn't tissue, it has blood vessels in it, and it'll look kind of nasty, but it's perfectly natural. These are domestic animals, very well cared for, well fed. But they just go through these natural processes that look a little unusual to those of us who are not accustomed to it. Those antlers, when they're harvested at the proper time of year, are worth several $1,000s on the Asian market, where they're ground up into a fine powder and used for medicinal purposes. We don't harvest the antlers in that manner here. We like them right where they are. The part of the antler that you're seeing when they get that profile on their head, you'll see the part of the antler goes right down over their, almost to the ends of their noses when their heads are down in the snow. That part of the antler is called a shovel. And when they're eating down in the snow, as they move their heads back and forth, that part of the antler moves the snow out of the way. Now, not all of these animals keep their antlers all winter. Some of them shed right after they rut or mate. Others will keep their antlers throughout the winter until after the young are born. At one time, there were herds of tens of thousands of reindeer in northwestern Alaska, and they were part of a red meat industry that rivaled the beef industry of the lower 48 states. In fact, in those early days, in the 40s and 50s, refrigerator vessels would carry freshly harvested reindeer meat to the markets in the lower 48, the west coast particularly. And if you lived in coastal Alaska, as I did as a young man, you could buy reindeer right off the docks in places like Kodiak, and people have a name for this phenomenon. They call it Nuchalawoya. And Nuchalawoya means wedding of the rivers. And if you look far off to your left over there, you can see the Alaska Range. That is where the Tanana River rises amongst all those glaciers up there. You're seeing the shoulders of some of the larger mountains right there. But this Tanana River rises and runs like a fretwork of main channels, backwaters and sloughs, islands and mud bars across 4 million acres of the Tanana Valley. It is an uncontrolled river. There are no dikes, dams, levees, or locks on the Tanana River. A little bit of protection around public works projects like highways, pipeline facilities, and that's it. There are no navigational aids on this river. To a trough where they slide into a box where they're stored and then later harvested. On shore, you will also see Dixie Alexander, I imagine. Right in front of the wall tents there, you can see Dixie and some members of her family. She's got a black parka on and a kind of a pink tablecloth there working next to the fire. Dixie will be our presenter. We'll give her a wave, and on the way back, see all this again. And if you're not getting the picture you'd like to see there, wait until we head upstream and you may get a whole nother view of the fish wheel in operation in Fish Camp. We'll give Dixie a wave and let her know that we'll be back in just a little bit. Now you're getting a nice cross view of this fish wheel. You notice that there are baskets. It is turned by the current, and the baskets on the downstream side are scooping upward. Now that's because it takes advantage of a very interesting phenomenon. The salmon can live in this water, but they can't see in it. So as they swim upriver, they swim right into that basket. The basket turns and lifts them out of the water. They slide into a box that you can see there. That box has no sides on it because we don't want to keep the salmon. That's not the business we're in. So we let the salmon get away. In return, the state of Alaska gives us a permit to let that fish wheel operate all year throughout the summer. Now just off the left-hand side up here, you'll see another fish wheel. Now this one is not in operation. It's a commercial fish wheel, and the State of Alaska Department of Fish and Game very carefully governs the use of fish wheels, fish nets, and other devices to ensure that there are open seasons to harvest the resource, but there are also closed seasons to allow the resource to escape, so there are enough salmon swimming upriver to spawn for future generations. The Superior Court judge, back in the late 50s and early 60s, a man who, I assume, loved living on the edge. Now, at the base of that bluff, you see a channel, and the water there is 20 to 30 feet deep, and it goes around that bluff at a rate of about 8 to 10 miles per hour. If you look out to the left, you'll see another channel way out there, far off next to those trees, and there's actually another channel coming in at right angles on the left as well. This river is a braided river, lots of choices to make, and a riverboat captain, like our captain's father, would have maybe 3 barges and 500 tons of freight, a vessel much like this to push it all. And he would have to decide back at that last bend which one of these channels he wanted to take before he got so close that he wound up on the sandbar. And this is like the rivers that go from here all the way to the Yukon, about 200 miles, and then another 1,000 miles down the Yukon to the Bering Sea. Now this bluff that we're going by right over here, you see the little light green tufts of vegetation on the most barren exposed areas of rock? That is sage. And we are, in fact, a semi-arid environment. Here in interior Alaska, the Tanana Valley gets an average of 12 to 14 inches of rainfall precipitation per year. Half is rain, half is snow. Precisely because if we did a U-turn, we'd wind up going aground. Now, this is an interesting maneuver, and it takes hundreds of repetitions to learn. And here's how it works. You see this over on the left-hand side, there's a mud bar there with kind of a cut edge on it. Just down off the bow, how quiet the bow is. Hardly any movement up there at all. Look over your shoulders or watch your monitors and you will see just how fast the stern of the boat is being carried downriver. And watching this on your monitors as well, you've seen the captain gauging that turn. Thank you, Captain. Thank you for the camera work too. That was mighty fine to see that. You know, he's getting the hang of it, folks. As I mentioned, hundreds of repetitions to learn that maneuver and the crew's instructions on setting up the traffic pattern. And then if you'll do this for us, if you would take your coffee and your donut away from the distribution point so the people behind you get their coffee and donut as quickly as you got yours. That seems like a nice thing to do for your fellow travelers. And then hang on to the styrofoam cups and the napkins. So if you folks will take care of your fellow travelers and the environment, we'll take care of the coffee and donuts. The gift shop will be open. We'll have 10 or 12 minutes until we get upriver next to the fish camp. When we get next to fish camp, we'll come back and talk to Dixie Alexander and tell you what's going on in fish camp and learn a little bit more about the Athabascan Indian lifestyle. Meanwhile, enjoy the coffee and donuts, and we'll talk to you upstream. Thank you very much.
Satellite dish. Cool.
Want to get a donut? They gave you coffee? They're giving coffee. I mean, none of us drink coffee. Why did you have to do that? You didn't listen to that. Huh? You didn't listen to her. You were just talking. Are they like...
And she's also a museum-quality beadworking and skin sewing artist, something we're going to interrupt right now and just have a little bit of a chat with her. And a good day to you, Dixie. How you doing out there?
Good morning. Nice morning to be at fish camp.
Well,
It's a real nice morning to be on the Tanana.
well, and it's not raining today. The sun's out. A little bit cooler. Must be real nice out there. How does this fish camp compare to the one up on the Yukon River where you grew up?
Well, this fish camp here in the Tanana is very similar to the camp I grew up on the Yukon River, where my family still fishes at the same spot today. Our camp is located about 40 miles above the village of Fort Yukon, very similar to this camp today. Although I think our smokehouse is just a little bit bigger than this one over here. We had to harvest a lot of salmon, and we had a lot more canvas waltons like the two behind me in camp. But since I have 6 brothers and 6 sisters, and my grandparents always came to fish camp with us, we had a very large camp. We'd head to fish camp about the second week in June, and one of the first things that we would do is put up the canvas wall tents like the two behind me. And all of us kids would gather spruce brow for the floor of the tents to make the tent smell real nice and they're comfortable. My older sisters would tan a winter careful hides and make nice bedding. Really nice to spend all summer outside, especially after being inside most of the winter. I mean, most of the summer.
Well, you've got a lot of family here now, and of course up at fish camp you had a lot of family, and that must have been an important cultural time for exchanging ideas and things.
Oh yes, this was a very good time for me and all my sisters to learn how to do the skin sewing, beadwork, porcupine quill work, and even the caribou hair testing. And we would learn these skills from my mother and my grandmother. And also this was an excellent opportunity for all my brothers to learn how to build fish wheels like this one here, which they still do today, and also to make dog sleds and snowshoes, and they would learn these skills from my dad.
Well, now, what was the main reason for going out to fish camp in the first place?
Well, the main reason we came to fish camp was to harvest salmon. They had to harvest a lot of salmon. In the wintertime, my dad went trapping and he usually checked his trap line with dog teams. And he kept about 22 dogs plus puppies, and each one of his dogs would eat 1 dehydrated salmon a day. So you can imagine how much salmon that we needed just for his team. That's not even including the salmon that we needed for ourselves. But we always bring our dog team to fish camp with us, and that way they were able to feed them, and most importantly, they let us know if any bears try to come around.
Well, speaking of salmon, you've got one over here that you want to show us. And folks, if you look at the smokehouse there and on the fish drying rack itself, you will see the finished product. That's the salmon hanging to dry and be smoked for preservation. Now, we've got a salmon right here that was caught in a fish wheel right in this area. Dixie will tell you a little bit about that. Salmon, Dixie, what have you got?
This here is the chum salmon. We also nicknamed this guy the dog salmon. And the only reason we call this the dog salmon is because they run twice in one season. Therefore, we can catch a lot more of the chum salmon, more so than the kings and the silvers. So it makes sense for us to use this for the dogs. I've seen these guys get up to 18 to 22 pounds. And I say this one is about maybe 13, 14 at the most.
That's a good size salmon. Well, now, folks, no matter how big they are, they have to dress them out quickly, and they really have to work fast. So keep an eye on Dixie, and you'll see in less than a minute she'll have that salmon ready to hang. Now, what she does is start with a very sharp knife and work right in front of the tail and slicing forward separates the fillet meat from the backbone. Then she'll go behind the gills and do the same thing, slicing backward to separating the viscera and the backbone from the fillets. The fillets remain connected at the tail, which is important, as you'll see in just a few moments. Now, the head set aside. That can be split and dried. It's a great source of calcium and protein for the dogs. She removes the backbone and the viscera. The backbone has meat with it, and it can also be dried and used in the winter. The viscera is either cooked up for the dogs in a kind of a mulligan stew, or it can be used as fertilizer. Then she slices diagonally through the fillet meat, just down to the skin. That allows the meat to hang away from the skin. It'll dry thoroughly. No moisture will be left in it. It'll be thoroughly dried, just fish oil, fish protein, and skin. The smoke is a natural preservative. It'll keep for up to 2 years without any additional treatment. And there you see, in less than 1 minute, completely about a 14 to 15 pound salmon dressed out, ready to go. Now, Dixie, what are you doing at this point?
Well, usually we don't like to put a wet salmon like this directly under the smoke barrel. But when we're catching a lot of salmon, some days we can catch over 1,000 salmon a day. That keeps us busy cutting salmon from morning to night. But when we're catching a lot of salmon, we use the air drying rack over here. Air dry the salmon until it gets a nice tacky texture. Then we rotate it into the smokehouse, rotate it all around the smokehouse until it's thoroughly dehydrated. Once it's dehydrated, it doesn't weigh very much at all. For a salmon that size, anywhere from 6 to 9 ounces at the most. This is really important for my dad's dog team, especially if he goes on a trap line trip that takes 1 to 2 weeks. The weight of his sled is really important.
Well, what's the difference between what we saw you doing there and how you would prepare smoked salmon for human consumption?
Well, since this salmon this morning is for the dogs, and they're not too picky about what kind of wood I smoke their fish with, I'm just using cottonwood. But if I was to make salmon for ourselves to eat, I'd wash the fish in fresh water, put it in a nice salty brine, and then would smoke it with a real good sweet wood. And up here, alderwood is the best. Well,
no truer words were ever spoken. Thank you so much, Dixie Alexander, for taking just a little bit of time to show us so much about life at Fish Camp. Dixie Alexander, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you will see her upstream as she's visiting her summer home at Chena Indian Village. We'll tell you more about that in just a few moments. If you look behind the youngsters over there in the wall tents, you see on the ground the spruce boughs and the caribou hide. The little Yukon stove in the larger tent makes for a nice, comfortable place to spend a little time after cleaning fish all day. And a little building on stilts, that is a cache. And that is where they store these bundles of salmon. Once they've got them all dried, they're up out of reach of the bears. They can lay the ladder down, no critters can get at it. Up in there, a good place to store fish camp meat.
Power here. And so you can imagine how important the relationship with my leaders is. Now you'll hear more and more noise as I get back towards the team, because they like doing, not talking. But I'm going to tell you about these last 2 dogs here. This is Stone and Jesse. They're the wheel dogs. And when this sled is fully loaded and I have a large team, it tends to track straight forward. So I need help turning when I get to corners. They do that by jumping from side to side, tugging on their tug lines, with their tack close to the nose, while I'm running and pushing on the tail. You saw me doing a little bit of that earlier. Now my job doesn't end there. My major job, other than giving directions, is to keep this fully loaded sled upright. And I do that by shifting my weight from one runner to the other, pumping with one leg, hiking the sled up on its side. When we get to the bottom, I actually assist my teammates by jumping off the back, running and pushing on the sled. As we get to the summit, and I want to slow down, I stand at the mechanical brake. You saw me slowing down to fix the post as I came in. Now I'm going to take off because my teammates certainly want to get going. Demonstrate those techniques I described as one right-hand command. When you all stop by as part of your 4 stops here in the village, I'll be trying to give you a history of the Alaskan Huskies and hopefully answer any questions you might have. So thank you very much and welcome to Chena Village.
Well, thanks, Dave. Now, you see the dogs are barking. Listen how quiet they get when he takes his foot off the brake and gives them the signal to go. See how quiet they are. They're off and running. They're just born to run. They love to get out on the trail and give Dave a ride of his life back there. You'll see it works pretty hard. This is not a free ride ever for the musher. He's going to come out back there by the fish drying rack and come around again. So if you're looking for a nice picture with the fish drying rack and the trees in the background, be ready for this. Out on the trail, he'd have several hundred pounds of freight, including dog food, people food, protective clothing for himself and the dogs, as well as a stove, pots to cook things in. The dogs eat up to 6 or 7 times a day. Best cared for animals in the world out on the trail. They rely on each other, the musher and the dogs, to take care of each other. Listen right over here for a right-hand turn. Man for right is G, and G, they went right into the kennel. G, Dave, thank you very much. Dave Munson, a champion of the Yukon.
Yeah. And a grizzly bearskin.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Oh, that sounds so much better. Welcome to the Chino Village. My name is Fanny. Can you hear me over the airplane? I'm sitting down. Okay. My name is Fanny, and I'm going to be your tour guide today. I'll wait. I am an Inupiat Eskimo, and my Eskimo name is Kikik-Doggo. You can just call me Fanny, that's okay. Kikik-Doggo means Kotzebue, which is the village where my family is from. Kotzebue is located about 35 miles above the Arctic Circle on the northwest coast of Alaska. I'm going to be a sophomore attending the university here in Fairbanks this fall, and I'm majoring in elementary education, so thank you for being my guinea pig. Right now we are in the Tanana Valley, the heart of Athabascan Indian country. And today we're going to be showing you all about the Athabascan culture, and we're going to teach you how they survive in a very primitive bone and stone culture. We will also show you how they adapted to village life and Western culture in just this past century. Now we're going to have 4 stops on our tour of the village. We ask and stress that you please stay with both of us as there are other groups behind us. Besides, we have a lot of good information to share with you, and we don't want you to miss any of it. Now I'm going to hand it over to my friend Sherilyn, and she's going to introduce herself. And she's going to introduce herself.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. My name is Sherilyn, like Fanny already mentioned, and I'll be your other tour guide today. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself first off. I am also an Inupiat Eskimo, so my family comes from the village of Wainwright. That's located about 100 miles west of Barrow on the very northern coast of Alaska. Now you don't get too much further north than that. My father's family and his culture is from an area a little bit further south. He's originally from Santiago, Chile. So I'm also Hispanic. And I'll be a senior this year, and I'm in recreation management, so hopefully this time next year I'll be graduated. And you have to forgive me a little bit because I just got my teeth pulled. Hopefully I can still do this okay. Well, the anthropologists tell us that the northern Athabascan Indians had to survive in one of the most difficult environmental conditions known to man. And they were very successful at doing this for over 10,000 years before any of them had any contact with the outside world. And that contact that they did have was only about 100 years ago. Now, previous to any contact with the outside world, the Athabascan people were semi-nomadic, and that was because they went wherever their food was. And during this time, they did live in the shelters that you see around you right now. Now, the reason the Athabascan people, like I mentioned earlier, were semi-nomadic because they went wherever their food was, and the main animals they did hunt during this time was the moose and also the caribou. But the caribou is a little more preferred because it was a smaller animal, and it did travel in very large herds. With their very early primitive bone and stone weapons, it was much easier for them to hunt the caribou. You see the structures right inside of the fence? That's what they would use to hunt them. They would climb up the single pole cache you see in the middle, and they would look for the migrating herds of animals. Now when they did see them, they would jump down, they would have miles and miles of the fence that you see right alongside the back here. They'd have it built right in the middle of the path of these migrating herds. So then when the herds came along, they'd be chased right alongside the fence, but they would have their antlers and also their hoofs caught into the traps, and they could also corral them into one more generalized area. Now the animals that we have here to show you, these are not the caribou, they are the reindeer. And they are the same genus and the same species as the caribou, and actually they're virtually identical. But does anybody know the difference? That's exactly it. The reindeer is domestic and the caribou is wild. So if these reindeer were to hop the fence today and run off into the woods, they would instantly turn into caribou. The other difference is that the reindeer is not native to Alaska. It is a deer of northern Europe and Asia. It was introduced to the Eskimo people, which are our people who live up on the northern and the western coastal regions of Alaska. And they're introduced by a man named Sheldon Jackson, who was a representative of the U.S. government. And he had a theory that by introducing these reindeer herds to our people, they would settle down into villages and have a more steady food supply, but it'd also make it much easier for the government to educate our people in the church and also in the school. Now traditionally and for thousands of years, our people had been hunters. And so when they were giving this herd of reindeer, they really didn't have the knowledge or the skills to carry. Together, and then the bottom is trimmed with land otter, seed beads, and calfskin. And if you notice the tassels at her waist, those are from the wolverine. Now the wolverine is a very difficult animal to trap. So basically Fanny is boasting that her husband is a very good trapper. So you're going to want to get your pictures out for this next one. Or your cameras out for this next picture. The outside part of this parka ruff is made from a wolf fur, and the inside is trimmed with the wolverine. Now, the wolverine has a very natural oil on its fur, which prevents your breath from freezing onto it. So they put it right on the inside part of the parka ruff. And Fanny will be available right after the stop.
Oh, it goes through wonderful.
Oh, we got the next one. You said 10 to 15 grand on that 10 to 15 grand?
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
See here are Alaskan Huskies, and they were on my team today, giving me that enthusiastic ride through the village. And as a matter of fact, I wish it wasn't quite so enthusiastic on that far corner because I just about go into the rose bushes there. But that's what makes these guys so much fun, is because they love their work. So what I want to do today is tell you what the Alaska Husky is. And what the Husky is, it's a working dog. It's not a show dog or a purebred dog. So it's evaluated very differently.
Built up on stilts. Now the reason it is up on the stilts is to keep the contents of the cache above the damp wet ground, higher than snow, and also away from small animals. Did you notice the tin cans that are wrapped around each of the top of these poles? That's to keep the smaller animals from digging their claws into the wood and climbing inside. Now the furs that you see around me, these are representative of some of the smaller fur-bearing animals you'll find here in the interior. So we'll just start off with this small guy. Actually, this is a good-sized timber wolf. If you remember, we saw an example of how this was used over at Dixie's cabin. You'll take a cross-section from the shoulder, and you'll use it on the outside part of the parka ruff. This next one is the lynx. It is our only wildcat here in Alaska, and it is a cousin to the bobcat. Some of the subtle differences you'll find on the lynx are the tufted ears, the black tip on the tail, and it also has big, fluffy paws. These paws will keep this animal from sinking into the snow as it bounds across. And this next fur is a wolverine. This is a very ferocious and a very clever animal. For this reason, it did gain the respect of the Athabascan people. In fact, the Athabascan word for the wolverine is doyan. And doyan means chief. It was considered chief of all animals. To give you an idea of how ferocious this wolverine is, if it were to meet up with a bear along the trail, the bear would not hesitate to step aside and let the wolverine pass. For this reason, only the best and the luckiest hunters came home with this pelt. These next two furs are the fox. The red fox is very abundant and very common here in the interior. The Arctic fox will not find this far south. You'll find it further north where our people are from. This next one is a marten. My grandmother would use about 3 of these to make a nice, warm winter hat. One for each side and also one for the top. Now actually, the tails are left on as decorative items. One tail told everybody in your village that you were single and available. 2 tails told everybody that you were married or already spoken for. You ladies might recognize this. This is a mink. This fur is very thin and it's also not very warm. Traditionally, it was used by the Athabascan people. They cut it up into strips and used it as trimming on their clothing. But after all the newcomers came into the interior, it became a very valuable pelt in the trading post. Okay, these little guys are the ermine. Right now you see them in their winter coat. And that's white, and they have a dark tip on the tail. Then in the summertime, they turn a chocolatey brownish color. And this time of year, we call them a weasel. But actually, all of us Alaskans have our own name for it. Would you like to know? We like to call this our Texas polar bear. This last fur I'll share with you is a beaver. This is also a very valued pelt. It has a very thick, downy undercoat.
something. King size bed, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Big ocean.
You mean just on the side of the mountain?
Yeah, it was quite far, but you can see it very well. But it's huge.
Tell us, we need to climb up.
There's one we go in this cabin.
As well as on board, the lines seem a little bit long.
Swift the current seems.
One tasting station there, they'll give you this smoked salmon spread on a wheat thin and compliments the captain. You have a little snack after your trip is short. Give it a try. If you like it, of course, it's for sale right there where you're tasting it. We'll be more than happy to make sure that it's available for you. We like to share this. We're very proud of it.
My clothesline in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Running out of socks.
Running out of socks.
The permafrost, because they originally made some mistakes. Engineers had never worked with permafrost before. And originally they put the pipe below ground in permafrost areas. It melted the ground. Ground collapsed, pipe collapsed. So the engineers, I'll give the long explanation when we get out there, but the short explanation is wherever there's permafrost, the pipe is above ground. So about half of the 800 miles is above ground. And those columns at the side are a type of refrigeration. And they're actually in the permafrost and refrigerating it.
Oil will do that all the time, right?
Oil doesn't stop.
The frozen boat. I've been known to play well into the night. My, oh my, what a beautiful sight. Now the summer comes by with a long daylight. You're searching for gold or just to see sights. I get out and fiddle, friend, it just seems right. My, oh my, what a beautiful sight. Because I like to play the fiddle and I like to shake hands, talk about fishing every time I can. Been known to play well into the night. My, oh my, what a beautiful sight. Son with a frozen boat, and I make people happy everywhere I go. I've been known to play well into the night. My, oh my, what a musical sight. There you go, the fiddler's son. Keep on talking. Around the turn of the century, this is what it would look like, folks. It'd have a fire and tent to keep warm, a big stockpile of material that they'd get from the shaft, and they'd use that two-man pulley here that we're using. It's called a windlass. And weather permitting, they would stockpile it all winter long, then seal the shaft off for the summer to keep it cool, and wash that stuff through the sluice box. Like today, we still have almost 18 hours of day. Would you mind, just for a few moments, taking a little bit of your expert time, please, and talk about our tunnel and drift mining to the folks?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. We got a wild bunch today, Earl. Well, as Earl said, I'm here to share with you a little bit about how they did tunnel and drift mining back in the old days. As Earl probably mentioned to you, those miners spent their winters digging. And just like that shaft that you saw on the way down here, the shaft where we had Marshall and Andrew working the windlass. Did everyone see that shaft?
Yes.
And it's tough to miss, I guess. Well, they would dig those shafts straight down until they hit bedrock. Now, behind me here against the wall, you can see what that bedrock looks like. You can probably see some of the other contrasting formations that are occurring here as well. Now, down below here is the bedrock. It forms a line. It goes up this way, and goes down over there. Can everyone see that line? No?
Yeah.
Now, for those of you in the back, the same formations are more easily visible on this face over here. I'll point that out as well. The bedrock begins down below here, forms a line going up this way. Now, this is all bedrock that's been broken up and moved around and heaved and buckled. You might notice with this particular section how the bedrock's slanting down. It's dipping underneath me here, and it comes back up over on this side. Now, that heaving and buckling is the result of thousands and thousands of years of activity in the Earth's crust. Plate tectonics and seismic activity are other scientific names used to describe that kind of thing, where over the years, different stones and minerals are moved around and deposited in various locations of the Earth. Now, up above the bedrock and in through here, in this region as well, are gravel. Now, this is a layer of stones that have been washed out into riverways and valleys. Many thousands of years ago, this was all the bottom of a riverbed. So, over those years, the water had rolled and tumbled and eroded these stones round and smooth, as opposed to this rough, jagged bedrock that settled down below it. Off above the gravel, through there, is the overburden, or muck, and it's basically just frozen dirt and consists of organic materials and various clays and minerals and soils. Now, when those miners were digging these tunnels, what they were looking for was, of course, gold. And as they knew, gold is extremely heavy. It's about 20 times heavier than water, or 10 to 12 times heavier than any other material, sand or stone, that it ever encounters. So, over the years, after the quartz that the gold was originally formed with broke up, it allowed that heavy gold to settle and trickle down through all this material, down to the bedrock, where it would drift along and collect into pockets. Those pockets are what the miners were chasing, and that's why they would dig down this far. Obviously, though, when the miners discovered the gold was settled down this deep, the problem they were facing was how first to get through all this material, which at first was pretty difficult for them. Because thousands of years ago, during the Ice Age, all of this material froze. It became what's called permafrost, which means simply that it remains frozen all year long. It never thaws out. Being underground isn't anything new to miners. In fact, they eventually discovered that mining these permafrost tunnels was relatively safer and easier for them. Because rather than blasting away the material with explosives, which is pretty dangerous, all they had to do was find a means to simply melt away the permafrost, and it would all just basically turn into mud. The solution they found was steam. Up above on the surface, they would fire a boiler. They would send steam down along these lines here, where it would come out to points like this one. They would use that steam to simply thaw away the walls and ceilings so they could chip and scoop up the material, and then they'd haul it to the bottom of the shafts in ore cars along these railways here. Well, even with that easier means of getting through the permafrost, it was still quite a lot of exhausting work for them to get down here. So before they'd even begin digging, they'd look for some form of guarantee, or at least hint, that when they did get down here, they'd actually find gold, make it worth their while. So they'd look for signs up on the surface from Mother Nature, and in particular, they'd look for other mineral deposits, like you'll see on that face. Now this is a zinc deposit. Everyone see this big blue vein here? Now there's some other minerals in there as well, to include some lead and some silver and some antimony. None of it quite enough to be worth mining, but certainly enough to indicate that that gold is likely to be nearby, as gold is commonly associated with these other minerals. So when they spot these veins on the surface, they follow them. They dig down here to the bedrock and branch out in several directions along this floor in search of that gold vein. We're going to show you one of the ore cars they use for the material. Some of the stones you're going to see quite a lot around. Now, at first glance, a lot of these stones are pretty plain looking. If you take some of them, though, and dust them off and look a little closer, you can see they shimmer somewhat, kind of silvery. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. There are several different names for this material. One of them is mica. You're going to hear that name used quite a lot, especially when you do your gold panning up above, because mica is going to appear in abundance in your gold pan, and it's going to shine and glitter like this, particularly when it's wet and clean. But don't let it fool you into thinking that it's gold, because it isn't. It's basically just a decomposed, broken up bedrock, just like that stuff I pointed down the wall over there. It's fairly flaky and fragile. If you take any little piece you think might be gold, just try to break it. If it does break up and crumble away, it's mica, certainly not gold. Gold is very soft and malleable. It would bend before it would ever break. Now, another interesting term for this material, and perhaps to make my point a bit more clear, is leverite. Or as we like to say, leave it right there, it's worthless. Keep an eye out for this mica stuff. Thanks, guys. Saw this one up. Now, as you can imagine, when fully loaded, it was actually quite a fair amount of work for them, those ore cars. What they would do to...
Look at the panning thing with the tool.
I'm going to show you a little bit of the above ground operation here to your left. You see a prospector's cabin, and then just a little piece of equipment right on the creek there.
Come here.
A young miner, his name's Andrew. Hello, Andrew. We're going to find out a few things about the creek. Go ahead and stand up so you can look over here if you like. You'll see that it's, see how it rocks back and forth? That's why we call it that. It's very portable too. They bring it in and out of the field. There's a screen at the top with ripples along the bottom. The screen will catch large rocks and large pieces of gold if he's lucky. Now he's going to take a little bit of material from the wood ripple area and pan it in the creek for us. See how he does.
Well, as I was saying, at the bottom of these shafts, they'd have one of those ore cars, like what Marshall and Andrew were pushing along there. They'd lower one of these muck buckets down the shaft so they could unload the ore cars into the buckets. They would then hoist the buckets back up and run them along these cables here, like you see, up to that pole, called the gym pole, where the buckets would be unloaded. They would come back down and slam into these logs here and be reset for the next load. Those piles there would get pretty big. So they'd move the gym poles around if they needed to. When the summertime would come, they'd let the piles thaw out so they could wash all the gold from them. That required a great deal of high-pressure water. So their summer work would begin by trenching for miles at the tops of these high ridges here, which would serve to collect and channel millions of gallons of water downhill to these hydraulic water cannons. Those water cannons would then be used to blast those piles clean and wash all the gold through their sluice boxes they have set up nearby. Now, in those days, sluice boxes were pretty crude and simple. They were made out of wood with wooden riffles and burlap to catch the gold. Nowadays, they're made out of steel. Steel riffles and astroturf, much more efficient that way. Now, behind me here next to Marshall is the boiler I was referring to. They were fueled by wood. They would eat an entire quart of wood a day. They would clear whole hillsides to keep them fueled. That's why they called them the Dragon. They would eat so much wood and breathe fire and spit smoke everywhere. But of course, what the boiler would do is boil the water, which would send the steam down along these black lines here. I'm going down below this tunnel. I'm going to thaw off those piles, and some others to go to their steam engines, like the one Sean's operating for us. They would call those the steam donkeys. In those days, steam donkeys would do a lot of the work for them. They'd run these buckets up, keep the cables tight, and occasionally even serve as an elevator for weary miners. Now, as I said in the very beginning, those miners spent their winters digging these tunnels and shafts. That's because that was the safest time for them to be down there. They were basically just dealing with frozen mud and dirt. If they got too warm, they'd have a high risk of cave-ins that way. Well, nonetheless, they got pretty good at it. And there came to be hundreds of these shafts all over these valleys. Several different independent miners seeking their own fortunes. Unfortunately, though, after the peak of the gold rush days, all of these tunnels and shafts were abandoned. And the majority of them either collapsed or filled completely full with water and froze solid, becoming virtually impenetrable. And who knows what they may have left down there for us to discover someday. Well, I hope we showed you a little bit about how they did mining in the old days. We're going to take a
Wire line drill rig.
You know, when you think about all this fast water and racket, you really, it's kind of hard to believe anything is staying in the fluid. So when you think about how the gold got to the creek, it's water that put it there. So we mimic that creek action with this technology. When we're working a particular deposit, we figure how much water we need over the riffle. I know. Current in the riffle and current in the astroturf, and they all serve to break the water at different levels to get the heavier metal to drop in the sluice and the riffle. The other percolation continues and it takes the lighter material on out into the settling pond. What Dexter and Eric are doing here now is pulling this test riffle. We do this several times in a day's run. Stop the water, pull this material, and it helps us know what the test material that we're running is doing. We're going to break this down into some pans here in the box. Mackey's down below. We're going to set up some tubs in here once the water settles down. Pan this material out. This is a real good opportunity now to watch how we move the water in the pan, so you'll have a good idea of how to keep the gold in the pan.
I'll try to get a little gold in each helper's pan.
Looks good.
Well, the gold wants to go right to the bottom. That's what makes it tough. Of course, I'll take the bottom. Well, there's your dinner, dear.
Thank you. Most of you would recognize these as gold pans, and you'd be right. The old-timers used to call them mineral bowls. They are singularly the most important piece of mining equipment that you'll find at a mine site. Reason being is from the very start of your first prospect cut into the ground until you're down on bedrock. And you want to make sure the bedrock's clear of gold before you go to the next cut. You'll literally run hundreds of these in a mining season. Try to get you a whole lot of this for Eric.
Want a bag or folk of concentrate we shoveled up out of the sluice. Once you're up in the pan area, pick a spot by any empty pan, dump that whole bag of dirt right into the gold pan, then you fill it up with water, start to swirl it around. You hear that grinding sound? That's just what it should sound like. That means everything's going good. Keep swirling. There you are, panning for gold in Alaska. Now, who said this was the top? Sort of looks like a stone soup or something, doesn't it?
That's right.
I know that doesn't sound very glamorous, but if you want to get the gold out today, that's the first thing you want to do. Get everything real, real soupy. The gold goes right to the bottom of the pan because it's heavier than everything else in the pan. At the same time, that leaves the top layer with no gold in it. So we're going to wash away that top layer with an action that I compare to a wave coming in out of an ocean of the deep. Picking up just a layer of the lighter top deep sands and gravel, carrying them back into the ocean with each wave. If there's some larger stones that don't seem to want to wash out of there, take a moment or two to rake them back, even pick them out one by one. Carefully rinse them off in the gold pan, and get them out of there. Then we're going to go right back and get it soupy again. So this is only a 3-step process. Once you get her good and soupy, work that soup over to the edge of the pan and let the water go. Don't dump the soup out. Here's the only tricky part. At the same angle that the water left the pan, that's the angle you want to hold the pan and go back to the beach and dip. Dip. Each dip, just a little wave coming in like a wave out of the ocean, kicking up the top layer, washing right back. Larger stones, no problem. Rake them back, rinse them off, get them out of there, and we're right back to making soup again. I'd like to introduce our panning helpers here today. We couldn't do the job without them. Facing upstream, helping running the water, and helping me with the test ripple after that, Eric. And facing downstream towards Yukon, there's Mackie. You'll be seeing these guys later in the day. They'll be the ones handing out the poke stack with the gold in them, so you might want to treat these fellas right. And then they'll join Yukon and I and the rest of the crew up in the panning area, standing by to give you a little help with your panning. If you need a little help, don't be afraid to ask. We're all in this together. We're kind of pulling for you guys. Right here, I got a few more stones that need to come out of there. I'm going to rake them back, rinse them off. If your neighbor ain't looking, just slip them in his pan. Let him deal with them. We're not going to wash everything out of this pan. Keep the last tablespoon or so of the very heaviest concentrate. No stones left. Put those remaining concentrates on one side of the pan. Gather up about a half a cup of water in the pan. This motion's a little different. Just start to roll that water around the base of the pan. Tip in the pan to control it. Wash the dirt from one side of the gold pan to the other. If you have any gold, it'll be down underneath the dirt. You may have to help a few little stones out if they get stuck up there. Little arsenopyrite here. Right away, somebody's going to want to know the value of the gold we found here today. Her name is Yukon. So she'll gather all this gold up together, take it in the shop and weigh it. After she's determined the dollar value, she'll let us all know how we did today. Folks, no matter what she comes up with, the best part about the gold in these pans right now, to me, brand new money, right out of a hole in the ground.
Where it was harvested. And that's pretty stuff. Let's think about its uses. How many of you here have said good as gold? Or something didn't pan out? Same thing. Dentists have been putting it in our teeth for years, so it's all over our language. It's in the airbags of your cars,
Wait a minute,
hearing devices.
Hold it.
What?
Before you get too far off this language thing, I want folks here today to know that gal right there is not...
Put the water in it and swirl it around. Like this. And just keep swirling it. Tilt it a little bit and keep swirling like that. That'll wash it. Not so fast. Just a little. See it up here?
Well, I told you.
Well, I'm trying to help you.
I know, but you want to photograph it too. You're a pain in the butt.
Well, you want to do that whether I photograph it or not, see?
I
That's how
know,
you get it
but
out.
I'm also trying to do it.
Or dump the water out now. Careful.
No.
There's nowhere else to go.
It's got up.
Dry finger on there, tap it.
Just put a little water. Don't dump anymore. Just now swirling around your pan to clean it.
We got towels. Listen, would you grab a towel over there?
There you go. Try to keep the gold on one side and the dirt on the other, and then you pick the gold out. You got it. You got more than I did. It's heavy, so it's all out.
bottom, get some in. You have to go so you hear it. So you hear it. You're not hearing it. That's it. I'm in the background. Okay. Do it like you're pouring it out. Okay. Yes, sir. Look at this piece here.
take your picture. Look out.
Know him? Big wrestler. Took fifth place at the Nationals this summer.
Okay, so this is 6 grains of gold, so that's $12 right there. Not too bad, huh?
That's rocks there. You want to keep those? No. Okay. Well, you can't cheat the skin. Alright, I will in just a second.
Okay, sir, this is 3.5 grains, so that's $7 worth of gold there. How about that?
We're rich.
Down to Valdez. And as I said, also about half of it's underground and half is above ground. Now the pipeline the first pipe was laid in 1975. The oil itself was discovered.
The Alaskan pipeline built on permafrost. And these are designed to keep it cold.
Big deal.
If I do that, I'll start calling.
I haven't played like 10 years.
Oh, we're so glad to see you. Oh, yeah.
It takes like 20 minutes every move.
Well, that's what somebody told me. They said their exams were not delayed.
Yeah, you have to run those clocks to fall.
In June, they just hung around the hatcheries.
But I started school.